Humza Yousaf save his political career? Is it hanging by a thread?
Well, we're expecting, of course, him to speak this very afternoon, so we're going to keep abreast of that. But, of course, the SNP power-sharing deal with the Greens collapsed yesterday.
Yes, and following the Scottish Conservatives' decision to lodge a motion of no confidence in the First Minister, Scottish Labour have now upped the ante by tabling a no-confidence motion in the entire Scottish Government, with their leader, Anna Sarwar, saying it is now a question of if, not when, Humza Yousaf resigns, or when, if not if.
Indeed, but let's go back to Edinburgh and speak to GBNews Scotland reporter Tony Maguire, because I suppose, Tony, there are a number of things on the table here. There's those two motions of no confidence next week, but also a cancelled speech from Humza Yousaf today, some words we're expecting from him this afternoon. It could all happen here.
Indeed, certainly we know that Humza Yousaf, he cancelled that independence labour market speech at Strathclyde University and instead staying in his native Dundee to speak about social housing. Now, we got a sense from the Scottish Government just before you came to me there to say that what the plan is, that the Scottish Government is going to invest £600 million by 24-25, including an £80 million uplift to basically procure houses and to minimise the Scottish homelessness problem. Now, this is indeed quite a left turn to what we were expecting, but it seems to be that Humza Yousaf is, at least for now, wanting to project a business-as-usual approach. However, he will be talking to press afterward, and I can guarantee that they will not want to talk about social housing 1 second longer than they have to. There are much bigger questions in Scottish politics right now, and I will say I'm quite a fan of this lettuce chat, and certainly Humza Yousaf, for example, well, someone in his inner circle should surely be saying iceberg dead ahead, because he has far too many problems I would argue be dealing with business as usual tasks right now. But there is an idea here that perhaps this is a motion to extend an olive branch to people who he hopes will vote with him next week. But certainly the numbers don't lie. He is really up against it in those votes of no confidence. Whether or not the government the government vote of no confidence will go through is another question. But indeed, quite a lot to take in and absorb at this moment.
Certainly a huge amount to absorb. And Tony, it just reminds me of when Boris Johnson saw his government collapsing around him. What did he do? He went off to the liaison committee, started answering questions on foreign policy and all the rest of it. And while everyone sort of sat there sort of slightly bewildered, going, why aren't you talking about the political issue of your government collapsing? You're trying to project an image that just doesn't match reality. Perhaps that's what Humza Yousaf will face this afternoon. But Tony Maguire, thank you so much for joining us there live from Edinburgh.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Tony. Good stuff, keeping the iceberg lettuce afloat. We can now also get the thoughts of the former SNP MP, Angus MacNeil. Angus, thank you very much indeed for joining us on the show. I'm interested about how much power Ash Regan has in all this. Now, she quit the SNP, didn't she, over the self-ID issue. She thought it was becoming far too easy for people to legally change their gender in Scotland. Could Humza Yousaf have to U-turn on those issues in order to keep her support, or to keep her on board to, well, decide his fate?
Yeah, the Greens forgot about the environment and the SNP forgot about independence, and they found themselves in this sorry mess. In some ways, Ash Regan is now the kingmaker, which brings on another problem for factions within the SNP, because, of course, Ash Regan is aligned to Alex Salmond, and there's some of the SNP that would rather not have independence because Alex Salmond probably wants it, and there's some visceral nonsense going on there. So it might be a problem that Humza has, not with Ash Regan or anybody else, but is to get some of the SNP guys who might not turn up at a vote of no confidence. And of course, he needs every vote, and they've all got to be there, and Ash then decides. So it's very much up in the air at the moment. There'll probably be some bluffing going on within the SNP to try and get Humza to resign before then, so that they're not smoked out as not attending in an act of disloyalty to their leader. vote of no confidence. So the soap opera will continue.
You raise such an important point there. It's been completely under-discussed by everyone who's been talking about this. We've all been going on about how there are 63 Scottish nationalist MSPs in the Scottish Parliament who are members of the SNP, and 64 who belong to parties who are now saying that they'll vote against. But there's nothing to say that all 63 SNP MSPs will all unite behind Humza Yousaf. Now, until recently, Angus, these were your colleagues. You're now an independent MP. But do you think there's a genuine prospect there of some of these people perhaps stabbing him in the back, his own party, saying, Mr Yousaf, it's time to go?
Well, I think firstly, with recent debacles over the last few months with the SNP, there's hardly a day goes past that I don't thank my lucky stars that I've parted ways with the SNP. I mean, unless they refocus on independence, there's no real point. But your question about, will everybody turn up, will everybody back Humza Yousaf? I think there are some at the moment who'd like to stab him in the back, but don't want to be seen doing that. And Humza could help them from making a courageous stance by resigning beforehand. So I think the pressure is on him. So Humza's probably got a battle at the moment between those who want him to stay and those who want him to go. He got rid of the Greens in a very clumsy manner. The Greens might have flounced out anyway, and he probably should have let them flounce out, to be absolutely honest. That would have seen him leave with the Greens, not feeling wounded and hurt and vengeful, as they are now, and would have seen him move to a sort of a softer landing place. But I think he wanted to be man of action, in charge of his own destiny for whatever purpose, and has found himself in this point of not of his own thinking anyway, but certainly of his own making. Now another question then arises, did anybody advise him to do this? And if they advised him, why did they advise him? Was somebody else in his ear gaming it a bit further than Humza gamed it?
But Angus, you say that he would do well to focus on independence, but surely one of the issues why Humza Yousaf is not so popular in Scotland is because he's not focusing enough on the bread and butter issues that matter to people day to day in Scotland. We've had a lot of Scottish people getting in touch who are fed up with the government seemingly not focusing on things like the cost of living, the NHS, homelessness, worklessness, drug deaths, etc., etc. So is that not the most important thing for the vast majority of people in Scotland?
You make a good list there, and there are a list of failures that apply across the United Kingdom. And we look at the United Kingdom at the moment in the state it is, with a very unpopular Conservative Party that's about to be booted out of office with a huge loss. And we look across the water to Ireland, the independent part of Ireland, with its 8 billion surplus that can do all those things. You list if it chooses with the 8 billion. We look at the part of Ireland that remained within
Where's
the
the
UK.
evidence to suggest, Angus, where's the evidence to suggest that independence would grant Scotland the ability to do all these things? Surely, according to most economic analysis, it would cost the Scottish economy. You'd have less money to spend on public services. We've seen how hikes in taxes, for example, have pushed the wealthiest out of Scotland.
Well, I mean, rather than the theoretical, we could look at the practical. Practically, Ireland left the United Kingdom. Ireland's in a far better place. If Ireland had remained in the United Kingdom, it'd be a bigger basket case than Wales or Northern Ireland. So independence definitely works. That is there for people to see.
Well,
staying in the UK certainly doesn't work.
I think people who studied the history of Ireland would raise the question of whether it was this panacea of economic opportunity for 50 years. After it left the United Kingdom, for 50 years, it was known to be a bit of an economic backwater. Huge problems, low life expectancy, all the rest. It wasn't until they deregulated their economy, cut corporation tax, that they became this sort of tiger economy. But I'm not sure that's what the SNP vision for Scotland is.
The UK.
Well, I'm afraid we do. I'm being told we have to move on, but Angus MacNeil, we'll have to get you back. And thank you so much for a spirited conversation.
You're very welcome.
Really appreciate it. Former SNP MP, now independent member of the House of Commons.
Yes, I do wonder if the vast majority of Scottish people probably would prefer the focus being on, the economy, the NHS, etc., etc. Anyway, let us know what you make of that.
Looking at the polls in Ireland, I mean, there's a reason that Sinn Féin are ahead. And that there's a housing crisis and a migration crisis. I mean, Ireland's in crisis as well in many ways.